Revenant Act 3 is here, and it introduced one of the strongest shotguns in the game called Slayer's Fang. You earn it from completing the Kel's Fall exotic mission via the Act 3 story quest. I was honestly shocked at how versatile this weapon is with all that it can do. When paired with the no backup plans exotic arms on Titan, this weapon reaches another level of strong. You'll find yourself melting champions and sprinting in like a sweaty striker Titan with PKs and trials, volatile exploding all of the enemies and spamming void overshields. My name's Novers, and welcome back, or welcome in if you're new. Over 93% of people who watch my videos are not subscribed, so if you find yourself enjoying this video or finding it helpful, consider clicking the subscribe button. It would be very much appreciated. Now, let's jump straight into the build. Starting off, there are a few different weapons I recommend pairing up with this build to increase its effects. Firstly, in your kinetic slot, I recommend running something that stuns champions or acts as a good utility weapon. A suggestion would be a shoot-to-loot explosive payload weapon such as Vulpecula or even Blast Furnace, but honestly, any primary works, so choose to your liking. For your energy slot, we're running the prized possession itself, Slayer's Fang, with Repulsor Brace for the catalyst to build into our overshields. Now, the no backup plans will also give you an overshield for rapidly defeating multiple enemies with shotguns, but this allows you to proc it much easier. Also, using no backup plans while your overshield is up, you'll have a 35% damage buff to Slayer's Fang. This absolutely melts champions and honestly any enemy. For your heavy slot, this is also a preference, but I like to just use whatever weapon matches the surge of the activity. I like to use a machine gun for long range engagements, especially considering a large portion of this build is designed around short range engagements. Commemoration, Hammerhead, and Pro Memoria are some solid options here. However, if you're in a raid or dungeon scenario where there's a boss, you can swap to something like Chill Inhibitor or Bittersweet for DPS. I just wanted to mention before we move on that we have a growing Discord and Twitch community that loves to run lots of different activities, and we have a great time. Consider joining into our server and hopping into the live streams via the links in the description. Now let's move straight into the subclass. For the super, you can use Twilight Arsenal or Ward of Dawn, but I honestly prefer Ward of Dawn here for the close range encounters and on-command overshield. For the class ability, I like using the Rally Barricade for the quicker cooldown. However, you're welcome to use the Towering Barricade if you prefer. This build isn't centered around your class ability, so whatever you want to use is totally fine. For your melee, I recommend the Shield Throw, as it is an easy way to proc overshield from medium to long distances. For your grenade, use the Scatter Grenade. This works very well with one of the aspects and one of the fragments I'm about to mention, and it deals high instantaneous damage to targets. Now, starting off with the aspects, we have Offensive Bulwark. While you have an overshield or inside Ward of Dawn, your grenade charges significantly faster, you have increased melee range and damage, and melee final blows restore a small portion of your overshield and extend its duration. Now, this is how you're going to be getting your Scatter Grenade extremely quickly, along with something else that I'm about to mention. And as I just read, it also allows you to get melee final blows to restore a portion of your overshield, which is great for keeping no backup plans procced. The next aspect is the one that works very well with the Scatter Grenades, Controlled Demolition. Hitting a target with a void ability or volatile explosion makes them volatile. Further damage to a volatile target causes them to explode. Grants you and nearby allies health when volatile targets explode near you. Now, with the Scatter Grenade, you're going to get a ton of enemies in a huge group volatile, which will also chain and explode very quickly. This makes it much easier to guarantee that you get a kill with your grenade for one of the fragments I'm about to mention. Now, moving on to the fragments. The first fragment is Echo of Harvest. Defeating weakened targets creates an orb of power and a void breach. Now, this is great because you'll be weakening targets via multiple factors, including with Slayer's Fang. This build also relies on void breaches quite heavily too, which I'll talk about in a little while. Next is Echo of Starvation. Picking up a void breach or an orb of power grants Devour. Now, this works very well with Offensive Bulwark to generate grenade energy very quickly, but it also restores your health. The next fragment works hand in hand with Echo of Starvation. That is Echo of Persistence. Void buffs applied to you, including Invisibility, Overshield, and Devour, have increased duration. Specifically for Devour and Overshield, 50% increased duration. Now, you'll be having Devour and Overshield almost 100% of the time in your gameplay, so having a longer duration for each is very essential. And again, like I mentioned, having Devour is great for not only health regeneration, but getting your Scatter Grenades as quickly as possible to proc volatile rounds. Speaking of proccing volatile rounds, we have Echo of Instability. Defeating targets with grenades grants volatile rounds to your void weapons. Now, I have told you to build heavily into grenades, and this is why, because it'll allow you to get volatile rounds for your Slayer's Fang, which absolutely destroys everything, as the projectiles from Slayer's Fang also proc volatile, so you can destroy a huge area of enemies, not just close to the one you're shooting. Now, let's move straight into the artifact perks. Firstly, we have Authorized Mods Grenades, which significantly reduces the cost of all grenade-related armor mods. This will be very useful in just a moment when I go over those mods. Next, we have Frenzied Hunger, which reads, Rapid Final Blows while Devour is active grant a bonus to reload and handling. Now, the main reason I use this is because of Slayer's Fang being able to quickly reload it. It's also pretty solid for certain scenarios, including when you need to stun a certain type of champion with a different weapon. Next, we have Power from Pain. Rapid Final Blows against weakened combatants this grant you Devour. Now, you aren't really going to use this too often, but I think it's a great failsafe in case you don't have an Orb of Power on the battlefield to reproc Devour. The next one is the thick of it. Rapid final blows while surrounded grant you armor charge. Next we have Curative Orbs. The first time you break a target's shield or break the shield of a guardian using their super, you create an Orb of Power. Now this is a great way to get your Orb of Power to proc Devour because you're going to be breaking combatant shields all the time. Next we have Void Renewal. While Devour is active, Void Weapon final blows have a chance to generate a Void Breach. Now this is part of the brand new artifact perks that were added in Act 3, and this plays very well into the Void Breach aspect of this build, which I'm about to mention. Next we have Served Cold, but we'll only be using the second part, which is picking up a Void Breach grants you melee energy. This is so that you can get your shield throw more frequently to proc more overshields. And finally, we have a brand new artifact perk, Old God's Right. After picking up a Void Breach, dealing damage with a Void Weapon creates a rain of seeking projectiles. Now this is super fun to use with the Slayer's Fang, as you're going to be proccing this very consistently. It's also great if you're taking down tankier enemies because it gives you a huge amount of passive damage along with your damage with your shotgun. Next, I'm going to be talking about the tonic that I recommend using with this build, which is actually one of the new tonics called Refined Tonic of Void Shrapnel. It grants you bonus intellect. Also, the boosts are Void Renewal, picking up a Void Breach, reload shotguns, and grenade launchers, which obviously works very well with the Shotgun Slayer's Fang. And Old God's Right, create more seeking projectiles on final blows. Thus, this will increase your damage with this artifact perk. Now, I'm going to be talking about some stats that I recommend prioritizing for this build. Firstly, as always, every single build in PvE, tier 10 resilience for that 30% damage resistance. Next, I would recommend going for tier 10 strength, as we do have Devour for our grenades, so we won't need as high of discipline as we do with strength. Next, I would recommend going with recovery tier 8 or higher, even though you don't really need it, but in situations where you don't have Devour, I would have this up high just in case. Lastly, I would go for at least tier 6 discipline, and yes, we do have multiple sources of stacking grenade recharge, but I still think it's important to have at least a decent base charge for your grenade. Now let's jump right into the armor mods. Firstly, we're running Special Ammo Scout, Special Ammo Finder, and a Siphon mod. In this case, we're running Harmonic Siphon to get Void Siphon for our Slayer's Fang. Also, the Special Ammo Finder and Scout to get special ammo for you and your teammates, because your main weapon here is going to obviously be your special weapon. For your arms, we have Firepower, Grenade Kickstart, and Momentum Transfer. Firepower is good because you're going to be proccing your grenade final blows quite often with the scatter grenades, and also Grenade Kickstart is essentially going to just completely reduce your base cooldown on your grenade by giving you a chunk of your grenade energy back every single time you use it. And with Momentum Transfer, it's really good because you're going to be reducing your shield throw cooldown whenever you throw your grenade and damage enemies. On your chest piece, as usual, I would run 3 damage resistance mods pertaining to the threat of the activity. Now, on your legs, I would run Innervation to reduce your grenade cooldown when you pick up Orbs of Power, Recuperation to give you that extra little health boost when you pick up the Orb of Power, which again, you don't necessarily need because of Devour, but I think it's very nice to have in certain situations. And lastly, we have a Void Scavenger to increase the amount of ammo that you get from the ammo finders on your helmet. Now, lastly, for your class item, firstly, I want to run Special Finisher here because in certain situations, you'll run out of ammo with the shotgun decently fast, and you'll need a fail-safe method to get more ammo. Now, a lot of people do get confused with this mod because you do need to have 3 stacks of an armor charge before this will actually proc. Next, we have Powerful Attraction, which will automatically collect all nearby Orbs of Power when you activate your class ability. This is great for panic pop situations, as Recuperation and Devour will both proc if there is an Orb of Power near you when you use your barricade. And the final armor mod is Reaper, which will spawn an Orb of Power on weapon final blows after using your class ability. Alrighty, Guardians, well, that just about covers the main part of the build, so now we're going to talk about the gameplay loop. Now, as usual, gameplay loops are very important because it helps you understand how to use the build in the most optimal way to get the most out of it. Now, I would recommend playing semi-aggressive with this build. Now, there are situations like in GMs where there's long-range gunfights, so I would recommend swapping to your heavy or primary weapon for those scenarios. But you're going to be an absolute tank with the overshields and Devour, so I would run around, spam grenades, try to get the grenade kills to proc Volatile for your shotgun, and also make sure that you're replenishing your overshield as much as possible, which you'll be doing very easily with no backup plans and getting multi-kills with your Slayer's Fang. Also, I would use your Ward of Dawn in certain situations, especially when you're close up to a bunch of enemies, as you're going to be getting that overshield proc constantly, as well as Weapons of Light. So TLDR on the gameplay loop, push in quite frequently, get lots of shotgun kills. Make sure you're replenishing your special ammo via special finisher or ammo bricks. Make sure you're picking up void breaches to proc the artifact perks, and even get a few melee kills along the way to replenish your overshield timer and energy. Anyways, Guardians, that just about wraps up the build today. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Consider dropping a like and dropping a comment on any feedback, any future builds, or any changes you would like to make to the build. Also, if you disliked the video, please let me know in the comments why, because I'm always open to taking feedback and improvements to the content. And as I mentioned earlier, if you enjoyed it, consider hitting the subscribe button, as we are pushing towards 11,000 subscribers, and make sure you turn that notification bell on so you don't miss any future uploads. That's going to be it for me today, Guardians. I'll see you later. Have a great day, and peace.